now we have a quorum. Awesome. Thanks, Tori and Brian, for joining in here. We're just waiting for one, and we got two, so we can start now. All right, everyone. I would just want to welcome you to the June 20th, 2023 Sidewalk Connectivity Committee meeting. It is a little after 11:30. I just want to call this meeting to order. We'll just do a quick little roll call for the record to see who's present here. We'll just go by musical squares here. Frank, you just want to say your name and say present, please. Frank?
Frank Skitty, present.
Jay Pimpare, present. Ralph?
Ralph Dormitzer, present.
Bob?
Bob Mofalt, present.
Brian?
Sorry, hi, present. Brian Joyce.
And Tori?
I don't know if I'm a committee member, but
Present.
You are, yeah, you're a member. We've got 9 members. We're going to have to talk to the select board. Potentially, we have unfortunately, a member who's never attended one of these meetings. So it would be good to potentially get another member on if we have to go down that road. But all right, any event, just jump through the agenda here. I have any topics not reasonably anticipated within 48 hours that somebody wants to bring up, and we'll table that till the end. But just I thought I would throw that on there at the beginning. Nothing? Okay, great. Brian, how are you doing on time today for a meeting? Because I have, as you see, Mike's here, and we have Mike on the agenda. I was just going to switch you and Mike around. Mike seems to not have a time commitment. Are you in a hurry to get out of here, Brian? You're muted.
yeah, no, I'm good.
All right.
Jay?
Yes.
Excuse me. Can you approve the meeting notes from the last meeting?
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. So
okay.
thank you, Carol. Next item of business is it's my first day back. I've been in Mexico for the past 10 days, and I'm a little behind the 8 ball. So the next item agenda is the approval of minutes from June 8th. I know that we actually have the minutes out there from June 8th and previous meeting, but the agenda only says, and that's my fault, only says June 8th. So we can only approve those. I didn't get any follow-up comments to that. So as a result, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of June 8th. Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Second, sure.
Seconded by Frank. You know what? We'll just do this quickly. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, that vote passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, 1, 2, yeah, 6-0. All right, so you know what? Why don't we just follow along here? Because this will give, this might help Mike as well. Let's just follow the agenda and talk about the overview of the upcoming paving plans. So, Brian, thank you very much for sending over the estimates for a couple of the projects. Before we get into the actual estimates, do you just want to give us an update on construction moving forward? Actually, let's talk about Doan and Church Street real quick. It sounds like everything was all done last Friday. Any updates on that?
Yep, so we had the final top coat installed on Friday. Everything looks good. Pending weather, we should have it striped in the next couple of weeks. Fog lines, and I don't think there may be a center line on Church out there. Beechwood Street water main should be, the trench work should be done. They're on the services, the actual water mains in the ground. So that should be buttoning up in the next 2 to 3 weeks, followed by a temporary patch. So depending on how that settlement goes, we'll see how that is in the fall.
So just to stop you right there. So as we kind of had talked about on the patch in the past, when they lay their temporary trench, it's mandatory 90 days before they can do anything, correct?
That's right.
And then before we can actually you want to let the trench settle, etc. optimally, it would be even better if we had a full winter season over there.
Correct.
So what's the thought? So if that's the trench happens in the next couple weeks, let's say that puts us into almost mid-July, given the 4th of July holiday, mid-July, and you're talking August, September. Now you're at October 15th. Is that the census we've been talking about all along here to maybe have that as a spring project?
Yes. So right now that, I mean, the option is to do it late fall or next spring. But, there are other factors, including public sentiment on, cleaning up the street. that
Yeah.
Come into play, so.
And I hear that because I unfortunately read Cohasset 143, and even though he seems to do a great job over at Church and Doan, it still wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for some people.
And
But
I
that-
say, like, time will tell. I mean, the trench settlement is, if it's gonna settle, we'll see. We'll see what it looks like after they do the final pave, and then we'll check in a month,
Yeah.
we'll check in 2 months, and if there is any settlement, we'll wait through the winter. If they did good compaction, which when I was on site, granted, they probably compact well when everyone's looking at them, but
yeah.
if there's good
Yeah, that's-
compaction, then then it should settle less.
So when they do their compaction, are they still held to like the 6-inch lifts or 8-inch lifts or 12-inch lifts, whatever they're doing over there? Are they
Yeah,
held-
I mean, the spec is 8-inch lifts and 95% compaction, but it's not, you don't get that. Nobody's out there measuring 8 inches every time. It's a guy in an
Yeah.
excavator backfilling, and
Right.
they have the the elephant's foot out there that they go through the trench. But it's, Beechwood Street is very bony in that it has a lot of rocks and stuff like that. So the substrate is pretty firm and everything around it is pretty firm. So if they got the compaction on their backfill, it should be pretty good. But we'll see in a couple months, and then
Yeah.
we'll make the call.
See what it looks like. Okay. All right. How does the sidewalk on Beach Street fit into this? Are we, as of right now, just looking at the road width, or, as we talked about in the past, how is the sidewalk potentially fit into this equation?
On Beechwood, yeah, the sidewalk, we're gonna do it with the paving, but we're fortunate in that this section of Beechwood Street, other than I think one particular area, has a pretty good width. So we can get the 4 feet ADA, we'll get our ADA compliance. There's not any steep grades at any ramps. So I think it's a lot better to come in compliance and redo that sidewalk than say like a Pleasant Street or Pond Street. That's a steep
Yeah.
grade and, narrower.
So when we say the sidewalk, is it going to be kind of going over the existing sidewalk, or is it going to be actually proposing for some curbing in there as of now?
Yeah, no curbing is planned. It's just bituminous. There's a most of this area has a grass area between the street and the sidewalk.
Okay.
So it'll be strictly bituminous, and we may put a ramp in depending on what the curb cuts look like at the intersections.
And so I'm going to go back and apologize for my notes here. Is that all town money for Beechwood, or is there gas money involved?
We're still waiting on the gas money, but hopefully there's predominantly gas money.
So most of the cost will be from the gas company.
Yes, that's the idea. Until I have the check in hand, I can't say 100%.
Okay. And then lastly, I guess is Pond Street. Is that it? How does Pond Street look?
Pond Street, I was hoping, I think the last time I was on one of your meetings, I was hoping, kept doing half the street. But again, I walked it last week and I looked at it with Carl, and there are a lot of lateral service trenches. So we should go curb to curb on that just to keep it.
And so is that gas company money again?
Yes.
All right.
Same caveat, until we have it, we don't.
Yeah. And so I saw the estimate for Pond Street was 130,000. Do you know what the gas company check was, if we get it, was for?
Yeah, so I think I sent you the letter that I sent them, and their promise on the checks are exactly the amount that I put in the letter. You
Okay,
know, it includes some details and
so no
estimate.
town money again. And would that would just be, well, there's no curb there, but end of road to end of road, there's no sidewalk involvement on Pond Street, correct?
Yeah, no, that's a good point that the gas company does not work, price does not include the sidewalk, but that sidewalk should get, a kind of an excavate and overlay. And same thing with that stretch of sidewalk on Pond Street, other than the right near 3A, we have a decent width where we can get the 4 feet.
Yeah,
But it's a little squirrely by that car shop next to Pond and 3A. So we'll need to figure out how we want to treat that intersection.
yeah. I think, but other members certainly please chime in here. I don't want to do.
Yeah,
do
the
all
big
the
question,
talking.
the
think
big
we'd be-
question, Brian, was we were hoping that if you could do only half the street, that there'd be some money left over that we could do something between 3A and King. I gather that's now off the table as a result.
Yeah, I mean, nothing's off the table. It's just, there are a lot of full street width laterals, service connections on the far side of the street that are just going to be, they need to get paved as well. And if you're just paving those, TL Edwards won't be doing just cross sections of, a mill and overlay. They'll basically do a mill and overlay the entire street. If we were going to do a trench repair, it would be a different company, probably with a mill and overlay for just trench repair. So it looks like the best practice would be to do a curb to curb for the length of the trench and all the laterals.
And what do you think would be a time frame for that potentially, Brian, on Pond Street?
So if we get the check, it could happen with, so Margin and Atlantic, those sections that we talked about from basically just beyond Whitehead and
Yeah.
Margin over the hotel, along with Smith Place and the little piece of Cushing. Potentially all 3 of those could go together while they're in town.
Yeah,
We like to lump projects
Sure.
together so that, because once they're scheduled in town, when they leave town, you're not going to get them for several more weeks because of all the
Yeah.
other community scheduling.
so what's your guesstimate on as far as timing? Would this be July, August?
Right now, we're looking at, I'm hoping late July, get those 3, probably mid to late July.
Okay. I'm asking for one for the committee, but secondly, which I'll get to in a little bit, the select board has asked for an update from the sidewalk committee. And so I'll
Yeah, I mean,
probably,
sorry to interrupt. I mean, I wouldn't give that schedule to them public. So basically that's
Yeah.
Until we get a firm commitment from them when they're going to be in town. But I would say, we're hoping, we're going to give them the notice to proceed on all 3 of those streets once we get the check from National Grid.
yeah,
Um,
okay,
And generally they're, 3 weeks out.
sure.
So I wouldn't say we're paving mid-July and then when it doesn't happen until, August 1st is
Yeah.
promises.
So let me, I want to share my screen here real quickly and just talk about the other projects that you brought up. For everybody. Let me know when can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So just a reminder for everybody, the green is actually the projects that are moving forward in the next few months here: Smith Place, Cushing Road, Atlantic Margin. The yellows, and I jumped down to the other 2024 and 2025, the church and the dome. The yellows are kind of in a holding pattern right now, pending a few other things. But I want to talk about the money, because this may play into what this committee is really trying to do when we talk about prioritization. And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the Smith Place and Cushing Road estimates, which were at 248 and 72,000 for a total of 320,000. The quote actually came in at $155,000. So doing my high school math here, based on our budget but real numbers, the numbers are actually we've saved $165,000. That
Yeah, so, right, yeah, and so we knew that these estimates would be higher, that the ones that are on the spreadsheet we're looking at on the screen, those are Mass Dot, better pricing than them. But, again, they're estimates. There are things that are not captured in there, like drainage work that we need to do right now on Smith Place, and things that are not in the TL Edwards estimate, but yeah, I think there definitely is a savings there.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And what huge is the next two, which was Atlantic Ave, from going down to Howard Gleason, and then Margin Street from Atlantic to Elm Street. The cost estimates were 225 and 374, coming in at $600,000, and the actual estimate was well, quote, not the estimate, the real quote was $183,000. And so based on just that, there was a cost savings of $417,000, which is huge.
So I'm just looking at the limits that are on this spreadsheet.
It was just for Atlantic and Margin.
Yeah, so yeah, no, definitely a savings there. What's not captured in there is there's a geo basically a tensile fabric that we're going to put under that roadway between Howard Gleason and on Atlantic. So that's not included in that capture. So that there'll be a little escalation there, but not definitely not the level we're talking about.
So just with these like real numbers, it appears that the quotes coming in at about 50% of that. So even if you throw a contingency in there, 15 or 20%, the quotes that were, not the quotes, I guess the real numbers seem to be at you can anywhere from of about 60 to 65%, even with the contingencies thrown in there of the actual estimate, which is huge and great moving forward. And I hope that pattern continues.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Okay. All right. So those are the projects that are, as of right now, is there anything else on the table to move forward with that's a guarantee? And I don't know if you need me to share that screen again.
No, it's all right. Just Elm Street, and I've been bugging Lenny, kind of daily on this.
All
but
right.
he's still on working through the quantities of curbing and getting estimates on that. And hopefully by Thursday, he told me this morning that he would have it. So we're still working on that, and the hope is that once we have that, we'll game to get that done as soon as possible.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So those are the projects that are in front of us right now. And so pending, the Elm Street and where that really goes there. Well, there could actually be some leftover monies, but we'll deal with that when we come to it. All right. Any questions on the upcoming paving plans from the group? All right. As you have seen here, Mike Sardina from Sardina Landscaping is graciously, thanks, Mike, here to give us a quick little update on the Elm Street plan. I know we've talked about this quite a bit. It would be really great if this committee, I think the intent here would be to ask questions and, maybe we're a little late to the game, but really give this a formal kind of thumbs up as far as the plan that's in front of the group here. Because if this project is paved over and whenever it may be, we certainly want to be able to answer some questions from the public, etc. So, Mike, if you just want to share your screen here, if you want to do it, or I can do it, it's up to you. It might be easy if you do it. That way you can move around a little bit. But you're muted right now.
So can you release me so I can share the screen?
Yeah, Carol. Any luck, Mike?
Am I released?
Give it a shot. Try and share the screen there, right at the bottom. Share screen. You should be if you're a panelist.
Yeah, I don't see the share screen, but
Right at the bottom of the screen there, the big green square next to on the bottom of the page here, right under everyone's name, big green share screen.
oh, there it is. Okay, so yeah, I had it down a little bit so I could get to my my desktop.
Can you load it up? Is it?
I don't see it when I hit share screen. It's not bringing up my desktop, which is where the information is.
All right, here, let me just.
Why don't you bring it up? Just you bring it up.
Okay. All right, can you see that?
Yeah.
All right, so I will, I'll let you, I'll move the cursor and zoom in here, wherever you want me to go here, Mike.
Yeah, just that's good for now.
Just obviously just give a little overlay of, where we are here, et cetera. And then I'll zoom in from left to right.
Okay. So the last time we met, we had what was a freehand drawing, meaning it was just drawn by hand. It had pretty much the same information that this is showing. But since that time, we've actually put the intent for the Elm Street improvements into the computer. So everything is literally hard-lined, computerized lines. And we've added color to the plan relative to the ultimate objective of improvements. The computerized plan was also shared with the TL Edwards Company for their use. Brian and Ralph and I met with them to go over the intent and to, in a sense, set them off with the information that they could use for developing their cost estimate for Brian. So if we could just put the cursor on the road. The road is being improved from Brook Street, which is at the far left of the screen, down to the east end, which is where the condominium project is. You can see the condominium footprints there. Those are the buildings that are under construction. And as you go up and off the page to the right, that's where you get into Margin Street's interface. And it
Just
also goes.
just a quick comment there as well. This, I believe, is the beginning of the Margin Street paving that will begin and head up that way as well. That's on the plan this year.
That's right. So basically, that's not on this plan, as it's not really part of the Elm Street improvements, but that was also part of the conversation you just had.
Yeah.
And then also Elm Street bends down to intersect with Border Street and with Summer Street. So the Elm Street improvements basically have a Y in them. And we also have that little leg of Cove Street right there by the triangle, which is part of the project as well. If we can start zooming in at the left end. So the road improvements basically mean that what we're going to do is have a consistent 24-foot wide roadway, travel ways, if you will. So two 12-foot lanes that start down here at the Brook Street end, and they go essentially to Margin Street. As we go further to the east, I'll tell you about where we have the 22-foot sections. But basically, what we've done is we've eliminated the parking on the north side of the road. We have the parking on the south side only, which netted us an additional 8 feet of improvement opportunity. On the north side of the road, we have improved and rebuilt sidewalks 4 feet wide to the curb line. And on the south side, we have 6-foot sidewalks, where the limit of the new sidewalk improvement is the back of the existing sidewalk. The plan shows the sidewalk on the south side with basically a beige color as opposed to the gray on the north side, just so that it can show that we've actually trying to make this part of an aesthetic system, which is better than what we have currently, where we have 4 feet against the curb line. Here we have a 6-foot sidewalk adjacent to the existing landscape on the house side of the walk. And we have a 6-foot, generally a 6-foot section of lawn between the sidewalk and the relocated curb line. As you can see also in this plan, that the street trees are intended to try to find a rhythm in terms of their spacing, given the number of curb cuts that we have here. So they're averaging in the range between 40 and 50 feet apart. Most of them are in the 45-foot range. And we also are showing here, it's hard to see on this plan, but there's some little black dots, little black circles that you can see within the green strips that are proposed pedestrian lighting. The pedestrian lighting is generally between 12 and 14 feet in height. It's dark sky compliant, and it adds another layer of the system, if you will, the system being sidewalk and grass, street trees, and lighting, which makes this a sort of a unique connector between the village center and the harbor itself. The street lights are on the poles on the north side of the road will remain. That basically is lighting the road. It's lighting everything currently. There's no lighting on the south side. So the additional lights on the south side, if we can afford them, would be obviously for pedestrian safety and also for ambience. The street trees that are green are the proposed trees that do not exist. The trees that are shown in pink are the existing cherry trees that are within the right of way. You can see there's a dashed line just running through those cherry trees. That's the actual property line for the road. Parking is going to be defined by paint lines.
Can I ask you a question on the trees there? So will the cherry trees remain? And that's question one. And then the second, well, that's the first question.
Yeah, the cherry trees will remain. The cherry tree spacing, as you can see here, is kind of random. That's probably because over the years, the trees have failed and been removed. These trees are quite old. I mean, they're near the end of their life, most likely anyhow. So by the time these elms I'm assuming that we're putting elms in on Elm Street as opposed to any other species. By the time the elms get large enough to potentially have some kind of impact on the cherry trees from a lighting standpoint, that they really won't still be around.
And what's the caliber and size of the elm trees you're proposing?
Well, that's to be determined. Ideally, they'd be probably in the 2.5 to 3 inch range when they go in as caliper size. That means that about 3 or 4 feet off the ground, that's about what the caliper of the tree would be, the actual the actual diameter of the trunk. So it all depends again on costing. Ideally, you're better off putting in smaller trees than really larger trees, because the larger trees take much longer to come out of their shock. And by the time you get 3, 4, 5 years down the line, the smaller trees have already caught up to the larger trees once they get started to grow. So I would think that we're going to be in the 2.5 to 3 inch range, which means the trees would probably be plus or minus 18 feet, 16 to 20 feet tall. And presumably all come from the same nursery and all have pretty much the same appearance. Ideally, they'd be almost like clones, and we go from there. As I was saying about the parking is going to be defined by paint lines, just like it is on the improvements that were done on North Main Street, opposite the Common. The parking lines, which do not exist now, actually define the roadway travelways by having an edge there, which is a white line, as opposed to nothing. Elm Street almost feels like 4 lanes right now because there's no paint lines anywhere other than down the center of the road. So that's another improvement where we have hope that this is a traffic calming method of defining the road edges. As we move to the east, as Jason's doing now, or Justin's doing now, we come to our first crosswalk at just near Elm Court. That crosswalk was definitely one of the items that neighbors on Elm Street that were participating in the public forums that we had back in 2020. They requested, almost demanded, that there's a crosswalk there because basically the bus stop for the kids is on the corner of Elm Court. And excuse me. So that's the first of 4 new crosswalks associated with the improvements. As we come around the corner, as we come around the bend, the south side of the triangle, the backup sidewalk is literally on the property line. The existing backup sidewalk is on the property line, as you can see. So the little section of roadway that is on the south side of the triangle is going to be 22 feet wide, slowing down traffic and not impacting the size of the island in any appreciable way. There's curb line shifts just a tiny bit, and which allows the 6-foot sidewalk to be continuous, parking to occur along that section, and the roadway to be 22 feet wide. A lot of the neighbors on Elm Street say cars fly around that curve along the island's edge. There is going to be a stop sign just before the crosswalk as you're going from east to west. So the crosswalk plus the stop sign should give.
Where's that stop sign, Mike, again?
It would be right. It would be right on the island. It would be on the island, right just near your cursor, just by the light fixture.
So it'd be traffic going this way.
Yes, right, exactly.
Okay.
So relative to the walkway improvements that we're discussing, when you cross that crosswalk onto the island, there's a new sidewalk on the north edge of the sidewalk, on the north end of the island, that would then connect to the east to the walkway system that's going to be constructed along the roadway on the north side of the condos project. That walkway doesn't exist at all at this point. So that's new sidewalk that is going to be built by the condominium project. And the space, the white space almost between the edge of the the window that you're looking at here and the condominiums eastern end. All that white area there is all public open space. Almost all of it is public open space. So the walk will connect directly into the open space at the cove end of the harbor. So that new crosswalk as well is proposed. And parking on the north side of the condominium project is also defined by the road being narrowed to 24 feet. The curb line moves out a little bit there, so it's consistent with the rest of the roadway all the way to the east or to the west. Obviously there's a bump out at the crosswalk to minimize the dimension, the length of that crosswalk. As
Mike,
we
I don't
come
know if
down-
this is a question for the town or this has been squared away. Is all of the parking that's proposed here and over there, is that overnight parking or is it just day parking? Because I know a lot of the areas on Elm Street now you can't park on. Has that been discussed at all?
It hasn't been discussed to my knowledge, but whatever the current rules are can certainly be maintained or they can be changed. The point here is that the parking that is on Cove Street and as you go down towards Summer Street, again, is parking lanes that are not defined, making it feel like it's much wider. And actually not many people park there because I guess they think they shouldn't, but that's going to be defined again by the paint line on the road. So as we go down towards the Summer Street intersection, we have the angled parking being maintained where there currently is angled parking at 45 degrees. That angled parking currently actually is shorter than it's supposed to be from a parking stall dimensions standards. So in conversation with Brian about this, relative to the curb line on the condo side is remaining as it is as far as where it's placed, and having straight paint lines for 8 foot of parking, and then maintaining the proper lengths for the angled parking. This section right through that area is also proposed to be 22 feet as shown there by the cursor. So from basically the Border Street and Summer Street intersection up to Elm Street as you're heading towards the village, that's going to remain 22 feet through there. So, and we are squeezing down the intersection considerably, or proposing to squeeze down the intersection considerably at the interface of Elm and Summer and Border, so that we don't have that huge expanse of pavement where the crosswalk is. So we now have a crosswalk that is more safe and more serviceable relative to big turning movements, et cetera, et cetera. The radii on the turn as we're heading southeast on Elm to get onto Summer Street, for instance, as a route for the fire trucks. The radius on that corner is sufficient for fire trucks. It's 30 feet, which is like the minimum that you would need to have. So there's enough dimension to have our cake and eat it too, relative to narrowing up this area as well as providing the needs for fire truck access and speed, I guess you could say, as they need to go up to an emergency. So that pretty much summarizes the intent for the plan. You know, our hope is that this is not a complicated project from a construction standpoint. Actually very straightforward. The contractor has admitted it as a straightforward project, so there's no real magic to anything here. There shouldn't be any considerable unknowns. There's very little utility work that has to be done, and that has to do with storm drainage, where the current curb lines that are being shifted out from the the drains that are currently along the curbs would just become manholes in the space between the curb line and the back of the sidewalk, and new drop inlets would be put against the new curb line location and tied back into those pretty simply. So There's no electrical, there's no water, there's a few water valve boxes that have to be raised in a couple places where that currently in the street that would now become sidewalks. So other than that, we've maintained this project is basically curb lines and paving and striping. It's real, and of course, landscape being the trees and the grass. It's a pretty straightforward project.
So for Tia Ledward's with their quote here, is it basically is going to be the pavement, the curbing, and the sidewalks? That's what they're cost estimating?
That's pretty much what we discussed with them. They did say that for certain things, they do subcontract out work, like for electrical work, like the light poles would be, and circuitry would be by somebody else that they would subcontract. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian.
Yeah, so they also have all the basins and the raise and reset any kind of structures that are out there for utilities.
Yeah. And there's also, they wouldn't be installing any of the street trees or the grass system. So that could be a subcontractor, or it could be part of the town's work that they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they will be quoting, and we could remove it if they want, but they will do a loam and seed of the grass areas where there wasn't previously. The trees, would be on us. And just one thing on the trees, I think, I think that, we should look at the size of the elms and make sure that they're good for, a pretty decent amount in the future. They don't get too big. I know some elm species get to be, the width and the height can be equivalent, and they could take over the, any wires or anything like that. And just in front of the fire station, it just occurred to me as Justin was going through it, we may want to either eliminate or kind of shrink down those islands that are across the street in front of the fire station. They already have paint lines, but they come in. I'm pretty sure you have the turn radius there, but they also come in and they do kind of a 3-point turn right there to back them back into the station when they come back in the fall. So we want to probably touch base with the chief on that and just make sure that could save some curbing. We could just paint that area and a couple of trees.
Thanks, Brian. It's Frank. I had to stop sharing to see if anybody had their hands up. And now I see you have a couple. Frank.
Yeah, just curious what the curb material is going to be on the south side. I think in the north side it says curb will remain. I don't know what that is currently, but curious what it would be on the south side where the new work is happening.
Curbing on the south side. I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to have our cake and eat it too here, have the project improvements done for the least amount of cost. And that was basically using the existing curbing as salvage curb and relocating it. And extending it wherever we have a little bit more overall linear footage in the entire system. There's some hundreds, let's call it 100 linear feet of new curbing that would need to be added just because of just geometries, etc. So that's the intent.
Okay. And that's granite curbing, the material?
Yeah, granite curbing. Yes, the granite curbing. Yes.
All right. That's all.
Relative to the street trees, I would suggest that the street trees are all purchased from a single nursery. They're actually reviewed in the nursery. They're in the ground at the nursery. And that if this project is built in the fall, that those trees should not go in until the spring. They probably fall dig hazards. A lot of nurseries will not dig certain species of trees because of the loss. The numbers of percentages go up for some species of trees that they're not going to survive. So the elms, if they're elms and should be elms, could be installed in the spring, even if the roadway project is actually constructed in the fall. That also allows for the procurement of the plants all coming from one place and being able to be seen. I'd be more than happy. I've tagged thousands of trees in my life, and I'd be happy to go to wherever these trees are coming from and see if they're acceptable in terms of their form and their consistency. We have about 30 of them so shown on the plan. And they should be in really good health and aesthetically pleasing.
Mike, are there any other boards or the select board or anybody at town, within the town, need to give this the thumbs up moving forward, or have you had a chance to brief the public or the select board lately on this project with the latest plans? And as far as like what steps would need to happen outside of this committee?
I'll answer the question as best I can, but this is really a Brian question in a sense. Since the select board has been asking about the improvements for Elm Street. The plan that you're seeing is essentially where the conceptual thinking and planning left off almost 2 years ago. So where we are today with this plan was essentially a consolidation of the intent, tweaking things here and there to make it potentially more affordable. The previous thinking was a little more aggressive in the Cove Street area. But in order to move this project along, Ralph and I worked out with Brian, and we worked out the plan that you're seeing. And as far as I know, it is ready to be shown to the select board for approval, so Brian can get this on the construction docket. By and large, if I can go back a little bit in time, the majority of the participants, the town, the public that attended the forums, and oftentimes there were quite a number of people that attended the forums, they were all in favor of this. What the town's folks don't know is that this is still kind of alive and kicking, because it kind of just petered out a couple of years ago. And now for the last 6 months or so, it's been kind of perking along to get to this point where we have a contractor actually looking at it from cost standpoint, which is much more realistic than we had 2 years ago. We had a completely unrealistic cost estimate from the consultants that were involved on this project. Actually, it almost killed the project completely. In fact, it did kill the project until it kind of resurrected last fall with a couple of board members that sort of asked, what's the status of this? Can we kind of look at it again? So that's where we are. And with your blessing, we would love to be able to get the select board to weigh in on this after we get the cost estimates that Brian has requested and are obviously within the means of being afforded and within our town's budgets.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Brian, at all, as far as the procedurally here in town?
No, I think as far as, the select board is the governing authority of streets and ways. So they present it to them, get their blessing, and then move forward. Just, as far as operational things, I think we need to talk to the fire chief about the approach in front of there, and then talk to the, the town arborist to make sure that the trees are right, maybe run it by National Grid, just as far as the tree plantings and things go. But the select board is the one board.
Yeah.
Brian, if I may, relative to National Grid and getting them involved in looking at the trees, if you drive down most of the streets in Hingham, they plant new street trees all the time in Hingham. And I'm actually surprised at how many times you see elm trees or linden trees or maple trees or not necessarily oak trees. Sometimes you see a few sycamores. They're all under the power lines, and they're all going to be up into the power lines in 25, 30, 40 years. And the town grid or the National Grid people just come by and they do their hacking away and make sure that the branches aren't going to hit the trees. For the most part, the sketch diagrams that Ralph and I showed you couple months ago, actually had all the overhead wires on them because they're shown on the survey. And we tried to locate trees where the vast majority of them were not being in a conflict with overhead wires. So I would err on the side of not asking.
No, I think so.
But that's
a
just
good
me,
point.
because because they're just gonna say, you have to plant a tree that gets no taller than 15 feet.
Yeah, so so that we looked at this with the Open Space and Rec Committee. They came up with, new tree policies and regulations, and there's a planting schedule as far as utility friendly lines. But the whole pole set runs on the north side of this, so it's really just the laterals, the service laterals that go across to the houses. So I'm, a little less concerned that it's not going to grow up into the primaries and stuff like that.
No, that's exactly right. That's totally right. All
But
the
if
main
there is
are on the
like
other
a
side of the
place
road.
where it's, a bunch of wires in one section, maybe
Yeah.
just.
Then we move the
plant,
tree we move the tree, the spacing changes or whatever. Absolutely right.
But that and just making sure that they're, I think all the elms now are probably resistant to Dutch elm, and
They are, yeah. There's a bunch of cultivars that have proven to be good plant material.
and just one final point, and this is, I don't know what kind of a wrench this is going to throw in, but Woods Hole has just come out with their final or draft final report on the vulnerability study in and around the harbor, with some concepts potentially on reducing flooding in the area from storm surges and things like that. And it was an idea that you came up with before, where elevating the streets in around the transition around the 124 Elm Street, the Harbor Hotel area. That's one of the concepts that they're bringing up. So, if we were going out today and we paved the street at its same elevation in kind with whatever, it wouldn't match with a potential future, elevating of those roadways by like a foot or two. So maybe there's money out there to do that, but I just wanted to put it out there because it is being discussed. It just kind of came up in the past couple of weeks with their findings in their report.
Okay.
Right. So just to remind everybody, and again, thank you, Ralph and Mike, for working on the application with me as well. We did submit an application, a grant application through the state of Massachusetts, the one-step grants. I think the final number was, even with the 20% contingency thrown in there, was upwards of about $900,000 to actually complete the project. So we won't know until October 1st whether or not that money comes through or not. So that's just, I just want to remind everybody about that. I mean, I think the project looks good. What I do like about the project is the sidewalks on the north and the south side. It looks like a nice 6-foot sidewalk on the south side is where hopefully the kids use it. I don't know if they will or not, but everyone every kid from 7 to 16, 17, 18 years old that wants to go to the sailing club or down to the harbor area, they leave downtown and they go boogieing right down Elm Street on their bikes. So hopefully they use the sidewalks, and pedestrians, parents, young children, etc., strollers. Hopefully they use the sidewalk and they have two sides to choose from. I like the crosswalks now, the addition of the crosswalks that go across. I think that with some nice signalage would really be helpful as well, so that people can cross the road and people know where the crosswalks are coming up and don't just speed around that corner there with the stop sign. So, that part of it, I really like. The only question I had, and I guess it's not even, I don't even know if it's this committee, it's the parking, and whether or not the parking is going to inhibit the fire department or the police department kind of making that turn around the radius of the triangle. I know that's been a question in the past, as long as fire trucks can still safely access that with the 22 feet, if in fact there were 2 cars there, and then the parking overnight. But I don't know that that's in this committee's jurisdiction to to talk about, but I just throw that out there. But, overall, I do like the plan. I will open it up to other committee members if you have any comments, pros, some things you like, or any questions or concerns about that. This is a full committee, so if anybody has some questions or comments, let's talk about it. And then I would like to just give it kind of a little bit of a vote of confidence, if you will, moving it forward. But Frank, any comments?
No questions. I think overall it's a great plan. I think it's much needed. It'll make the connection between downtown and the harbor much more safe and pleasing to use. And I think that's one of the goals of this Sidewalk Committee is to make that connection. So I think this accomplishes that. That has my full support. I think it's a great plan. Thanks, Mike and Ralph and everyone else who was involved to put that together.
Ralph, I think I know where you stand, but I'll throw it out there. Any comments?
Well, the only thing is, it would be helpful, I think, for the select board to know how this committee feels. I think that's the important thing here. So, yeah.
All right. Any other members have any comments or questions or?
Tori has her hand up.
Oh, I don't see the hand up, but by all means, I apologize.
Looks like I see a white hand on a black screen, but right by her name, above her name, but
Tori, if you have your hand up, by all means. I'm sorry, but I don't see it on my end. Okay. All right. The only other question I would have is actual on timing on all this. I know that there are a lot of things up in the air. Obviously, we have the harbor project that's right there. I know curbing is supposed to go in. I'd like to be optimistic, but I have no idea.
no.
When that's actually going to go in. So my only question is as far as timing goes, and I don't know if anybody has an update on that. Brian, any question on like what's actually going on with the infrastructure in the area? And in a perfect world, I know that this was this probably wouldn't happen tomorrow, even if we got the green light from all of the boards and approvals. But where are we with potential timing?
So the last I heard was probably a month ago. We had a site meeting with John Hallen and the developer about the sidewalk and their site work in general, and they were looking, I think, projecting at August to have the majority of the site work done. So they have I think a utility trench on the south side for electrical connection underground, and then after August, I think it's all internal finishes. They're going to have the structure up. At least that was what they intended. So I think concrete trucks and heavy machinery should be pretty much done around then.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They are also, we requested, that crosswalk that was proposed by Mike on the just east of Elm Court. They should be installing that crosswalk, at least the tread mat on the north side, and on the south side, kind of a temporary tread mat with a crosswalk in that section. So when we do go to redo the street, we can at least reuse that tread mat area and then reinstall the crosswalk in that same location.
Mm-hmm. How long would you have to? I would imagine that a road like this that's heavily traveled, and I guess 3A would be a good example. They actually open up the road. It might be closed from 9 to 5, but at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a nice hot summer day, and it's had a chance to dry with no rain, people can drive on it at night if they just do one side at a time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think schedule-wise, you'd want to, we could go one lane traffic, but they'd probably get it done, with a 24 foot lane street. They'll pave it in one day.
Yeah.
I think the majority of the work is going to be all the new curbing, all the excavation on the side. So that's going to be the large part of the schedule. The actual surface overlay is gonna be, they'll probably do that in a day, once everything is graded and ready to go.
All right. Any other questions from the committee members? Again, my only question, I guess, would be, the timing of this all. And I mean, if we had money, then great. If we were running low on funds and we were able to use grant money to pay for it, that certainly opens up a lot of other avenues. But I guess, that ultimately would be a select board decision as it gets a little closer on the timing of that, on when this could occur. My sense is that it could occur, in a perfect world, if all the stars were aligned, I would guess to say like September 1st at the earliest, from what I'm hearing. Or potentially if it weren't this fall, it would be a very early spring at the first moment to pounce on paving in the spring. It could be done in the spring as well. Any other comments on that, Brian, as far as like the earliest that it could possibly be done, being realistic?
Yeah, I think September timeframe is fair.
Okay.
For the early prediction.
All right. Okay, any other comments on this plan? I think it would be good. I know the select board has asked the committee to provide an update, and I'm sure this is going to be one of the questions that come up, and I'd like to give them a vote of confidence with this project, unless somebody has any other questions. So I guess I will put out a motion of a formal vote of I don't know, Ralph, if there's better language you want to use. I don't want to use vote of approval. Maybe vote of confidence with this project, or is
the usual way, because we're underneath the select board, and many other committees have, they recommend to the select board is what it usually. the words are
recommendation?
usually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will make a recommendation to move the project forward with the support of the committee, if in fact it gets full support here. Is there a second?
Certainly I'll second, although I'd love somebody else to do it. So,
A second, yeah.
Seconded by Frank. All right, we still have 1, 2, 3. We still have 6 members here. I'll just do it by all together. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That vote carries 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0. So a unanimous vote of recommendation to move the project forward. All right. The next item is the setting of the criteria for the roadways and sidewalk for future use. I know I have another call here at 1 o'clock that I need to prepare for. I know we've Mike. Thank you very much. If you're
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your
Mike.
support, and holler anytime if you want any questions answered that I haven't answered.
Well, Mike, this one last question here, as far as
Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. Well, the latest plan, since you emailed it to me, I don't intend to make this public by any means, but how close are you keeping that to the vest there? If the select board wanted an update, I mean, I'm not volunteering to throwing out any plans whatsoever, but what's your feeling on the plans here as far as a circulation to somebody?
Well, I would just assume that the next step is the select board and the plan that I showed you, and our black and white plans, whatever they want to see, I can certainly provide. We can work with Justin for him to put it on the town's the website for participation by members who don't come in person, et cetera, et cetera. But at this point, I don't really know what the protocol should be. I don't think it should be made public without the select board being aware of it. It might broadside them. I would think that the select board members would want to ask a lot of questions about it. We know that there's some that are favorably inclined and others that are unsure at this point, but that's just my understanding. I don't know if that's still the case, but I don't think we should make it public unless, I mean, Ralph has a better finger on the pulse than I do about this stuff. So I would defer to him on recommendations.
Yeah,
I think
no,
it- I think-
go ahead, Ralph, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's really wise to have the select board weigh in on this one.
Yep.
That was my suggestion here. That better not to try to move it out to other committees or anything else until they in fact have had their say on this thing, I'd say. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Just wanted to clear that up. Gotcha.
Thank you for asking though.
Okay.
Okay,
All
sorry,
right.
everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. The next item was the setting of the criteria. I sent that out to everybody. I didn't get any response from anybody as far as any negativity. I want to bring up one thing, and I don't want to go past 1 o'clock, and I don't want to go up until 1 o'clock, to be honest with you. Sorry. So this was the criteria that we had come up with, and I want to talk about the school connectivity a little bit in the mapping. So Frank, thank you very, very much. Frank had put together the radii of 0.5 miles, 1 mile, and 1.5 miles. And I believe I actually have that here on my screen somewhere. I have to, oh, there it is. This was 0.5 miles, just to give you a flavor of what that looked like from the two schools, the Osgood and the high school. And then we used a 1 mile radius. And then we have a 1.5 mile radius. In Cohasset, which is almost covers the entire town, if you live outside of the 2 mile radius, you are allowed to take the school bus. And if you look at that 2 mile radius, that pretty much virtually almost wipes out all of Cohasset, even though which it brings you up around Jerusalem Road and Straits Pond and a little area here, even though the school bus goes through all of these areas of town anyway. But so what I was getting at is I just wanted to talk about what you feel I don't even know what this number really means, to be honest with you. What does this number really mean if we start to look at, or we identify 0.5, 1 mile, 1.5, or 2 mile radius? As far as setting of the criteria, in my view, it's almost just a number. But I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts looking at those maps?
let me weigh in on this. What I did is, once I saw what Frank had done, which was a great job, is realized it's probably too wide a radius, even if it's a half a mile. So I said to myself, well, what is the actual requirement that the schools follow? And I contacted Ellen Marr, and she sent me the explanation, and I'm be delighted if you want me to read it. It's not too long, but it also changes will change our thinking somewhat as to what we in fact would recommend in the way of sidewalks. So if you are tolerant of reading a paragraph here, then we can go to. Are you?
Go for it quickly.
All right.
I've read it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It says, this is from Ellen, okay? According to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, all children grades K through 6 who reside more than 2 miles from the school are entitled to attend, and the nearest bus stop is more than a mile from their residence, are eligible for buses. And then it goes on to talk about exceptions may be granted due to road conditions or the child's health, making busing essential. She said, last thing I knew, Cohasset follows that rule, but makes busing available for all students in town, of course, for a fee. So what it really says is that it isn't really 1 mile radius from the school. It is really 1 mile from the nearest bus stop as I read this, making this a lot more complex question. And so although I don't think we should reject our concept of some kind of criteria, the criteria have to fit more carefully with what this description actually says. That's all.
Okay. So, thank you for that. Hearing that, let me see here. Let me share my screen again here. Real quickly for everybody. Sorry. I mean, I think it's good for presentation purposes to talk about what 0.51 and 1.5 looks like, but it might be school connectivity, might be something to do with actual bus stops. If we want to put the bus in there about, kids waiting for buses, etc.
I think in this case, I would just modify it and say that in accordance with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's recommendations, okay? And make it more broad, because it's too complex to explain that, I think. But if you just say it's in accordance with, then we have some way to actually look at it in detail.
Okay.
Was that helpful to you or not?
Yeah, no, that's helpful. It's kind of a fairly broad statement, but I think what was really helpful is when we start to get into the details about if somebody says we really need curbing and a sidewalk here, and again I'll use the example of Jerusalem Road at Windy Hill, where we have 32 students between the ages of 5 years old and going up to 5th grade, so that's probably like 9-10 years old, between getting on and off that bus every morning, and they're standing in the middle of Jerusalem Road, or when it's snowing out and the sidewalks you can't stand on the sidewalks, where do they go? So I don't know, it's broad, but we can use it, and if there needs to be some examples, we can certainly put examples in there. Okay. It hasn't been any other questions on that criteria. If people want to take a look at that criteria again, what I intend to use that for is, and we haven't get into the details about the sidewalks yet, is just for PowerPoint presentation purposes. It just, you say the committee developed this criteria, and then boom, 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 and just lay that criteria and kind of move on. But as we start to think about future sidewalks and existing sidewalks, going back to making sure that the projects hit all of those criteria, and I think that they easily would. The select board has kind of informally asked about some dates to have a joint meeting with this sidewalk committee, and I want to make, given that we have tough times having a quorum during daytime hours, I don't know that nighttime hours are going to be any better. Ralph, I certainly want to talk to you about that. Maybe it would just be if we can't have 3 representing the committee, it would have to be either 1 or 2 people. Typically, it's the chair. I'm happy to have a joint meeting, but I want to make sure we have a full quorum, or at least representation. I don't want to sit here and have to call people if there's and the select board meets every Tuesday or every other Tuesday. So I don't know what people's schedules are for like next Tuesday, the 27th at 7 or 7:30 at night. And or do we feel like we want to have a full committee meeting, or we just give a quick update on where we are? And that, that unfortunately, that's usually the chair, which would be me, doing 99% of the talking anyway. And whether or not it would just be easier to have a chair do that update. Well, and Ralph, I want to invite you, Ralph.
Well, the only thing I'm concerned about is that there are more insightful people out there, particularly those with children in the school system, than I. And I'm reluctant to say it's just you and I. And I know how hard it is to get a quorum, but I prefer that others actually join in on it who have very specific examples of where sidewalks are needed rather than me trying to represent you. So I don't want to cop out.
Yeah.
I do feel strongly about that people do know more than I do about the needs of the kids. They really do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Frank, what's your schedule like next Tuesday night for a potential 20-minute representation? I have a feeling that judging by the people that kind of drop off the call here, that we're up against the forum here. So please, nobody else leave, or we won't be able to talk anymore. Getting a quorum together is going to be difficult.
Yeah, I can be available next Tuesday.
All right, I'll keep you
And
posted.
I'm
on
happy
that.
to come with some examples, I mean, at least from my neighborhood, of places where I think there could be some sidewalk improvements.
Yeah.
If that would be helpful, or just the general representation of the board.
Well, I think that the next step for this board is going to be huge in this fact. Like, again, when I was going back to the paving plans here, and Brian, which is why you're crucial to all these meetings. So thank you for coming. I'm using total round rough numbers here, but if we had $1 million in the road budget, and even if we did the Smith Place and Atlantic right now, that only chews up 338,000. If Beechwood were not done, and let's say Elm Street, even if Elm Street was done, and let's say it comes in at 400,000, you're still looking at 200, roughly, 200,000 left over. And if Elm Street is not done, then you're looking at, well, okay, we've used 338, let's bump it up to 450 because of other incidentals. You still have roughly $500,000 left over. So I think the committee needs to start thinking about other, and hopefully we have the time to do this, about other projects if there is leftover monies to try and move that forward. And then that's when it comes down to the prioritizing is really what this committee is all about. But Brian, what's your sense that now that here we are, June 20th, kind of in the let's say middle of summer, really, or getting into summer and getting into the paving schedule, and looking at the window of opportunity of whatever window we're using, October 15th or so, or October 30th, as far as getting some projects done, and then looking at the crystal ball and saying, we could actually have a couple dollars left over here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're always going to be chasing grants and money, and we were fortunate that we got some for this year. So, and then if we get money from National Grid, it's, we get to keep money in our pocket and use it towards other streets. So, there's no shortage of work. We will spend all the money. Will we spend it all this year? Sometimes projects like Elm Street might get lined up and earmarked and then get delayed until the spring. So those budgets kind of carry through the winter. But I mean, there's a short list of roads. South Main Street is kind of in the way of Church and Doan Street right now. If you drive down through Situate, that's on a really short list. That's a big stretch of road. It's got a lot of sidewalk. So I would focus on that. There's a couple of open questions on that one with, regional sewer and,
Right.
some minor utility work, but eventually we can't wait for those questions to be answered. We need to pave it if it just falls apart, and we've had to do some serious patching out there, and it's still, those patches are only good for, months.
Yeah. Brian, do you think for our next meeting, you could email me just a quick little, what you did this morning was great, just a little, hey, these roads are also like, and I was going to bring up South Main Street because I know as you brought that up, thank you, in the past couple of meetings about, there are other instances that we need to start thinking about, but just some other roadways that are on the, on the public's view and in the town's view, that, if there was available monies, and then the concerns about those, and why haven't they been paved so far? So, short list.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you start at like the your main thoroughfares and connectors, and we probably have about 7 coming into town: South Main, North Main, Beechwood. Obviously 3A we don't own, but Atlantic, Jerusalem. So you start there and then you work your way down to the smaller side roads, but the hillside, basically between Pleasant Street and Pond Street, including Bancroft, all those residential roadways are in need of repair. And there's, some utility work that needs to go in there. So it's, we try to hit the main thoroughfares first, South Main Street probably being the next biggest one on the list. And then, everything between Pleasant and Pond Street is just, those really need to be done. The Norfolk Road, Bancroft Road, Ash, all those connectors, those ladder connectors going up the residential hill there. So that's kind of generally geographically the short list. And then we have, sidewalks connecting, various parts of those.
Right.
I was
Okay.
thinking, is Norman Todd Road one of those that you might consider then sooner than Brian? Because obviously a big connector road. None of there's, it's the old, what we call Beechwood, but is really Norman Todd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a good point, right? From South Main Street all the way to really 3A, that's on the list as well.
Okay, yeah,
And there was discussion, maybe 7 years ago about connecting that sidewalk system. So the sidewalk basically ends at where Beechwood turns into Norman Todd, and then it picks back up by the train tracks. So
Yeah.
kind of connecting those dots.
Yeah.
You could walk then to, Shaw's and that kind of area.
Yeah.
And if you did that, like we did Sawyer Street, once DOT comes in and does their full road reconstruction from Situate up to Pond Street with sidewalks on both sides, that sidewalk system then would connect to the DOT sidewalk, and you could potentially, walk,
Right.
do your shopping.
Okay. What do people's calendars look like for our next meeting? If we could push it out 2 weeks, that's 4th of July. Probably try and avoid that week if possible. I know most people are on vacation, etc. Maybe we try and schedule a meeting the week after,
sure.
like July 11th.
Okay.
How's that look on everyone's calendar? July 11th at 11:30?
Let's see, make sure what I got here.
Yeah, just a heads up, that's 3 days from my wife's due date, so that's all
Oh,
very
boy.
TBD around then.
Well, congrats in advance. Good
Thank
and
you.
best of luck.
Thanks.
July
other than
11th
that,
is
that
okay
works
by
for me.
me. Yeah.
Does that work for you, Brian?
Yeah,
July.
I'm pretty open. I'm not, I'll probably usually take the last week of August.
All right.
Cool.
So let's shoot for the next meeting of July 11th at 11:30.
Okay.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Everyone have a great week. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
You
Okay,
too.
thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks.